Welcome. Namaste. Hi there, beautiful souls. Today I am here to offer a walkthrough of Legend, the Arthurian Tarot by Anna Marie Ferguson. This is a deck that first came out in the UK, I believe, in about 1995. And the version of the deck that I am working with is a second edition from 2012. This deck is no longer in print, and I know it's available on eBay. It's available secondhand in all the secondhand resources, Facebook groups, and things like that. I purchased this deck because I am a fan of the Llewellyn Tarot, which is another Waite-Smith deck based on I'm going to say the name wrong, the Mabinogion Welsh tales, especially the major arcana anyway. And I did a side-by-side, and I believe it's linked below, of the Llewellyn and this deck. And in that video, I said that I was going to work with this deck, and I believe that I started to, but then got completely lost in the legends, or in the legend, the Arthurian legends that this deck is based on. So I am going to resolve that. Today I'm going to do a walkthrough, and then I will be somehow finding time for more of a podcast, a live podcast, where I will read aloud the legend for each of the cards and then do a bit of a reflection on how that legend weaves into the tarot, both through Golden Dawn associations, which would be the references that Anna Marie is referencing. She also, at the beginning of this very impressive guidebook, Keeper of Words, Legend, the Arthurian Tarot, does some sample spreads. And interestingly, one of the spreads is based on the 12 houses. It's an astrological spread. Now, while I have not read this book cover to cover, I'm wondering if she's also building in zodiacal associations too. So that will be a layer I'll also be looking at. There are planetary associations listed in the guidebook, so I will share those as we go through. So today, this is simply a walkthrough, and if you are interested in this deck, or if you have it and you've never used it, be sure to like, subscribe, and then you will get a notification when the podcast is up and running. And I will also make an announcement in my Friday chat as well too, when this is going to begin. Okay. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sadhana, and I am a tarot lover, teacher, student. I've been practicing the tarot for over 25 years, and it's my pleasure to do these kind of deep dives into decks. So enjoy. Percival is gazing towards Camelot, looking to his future. Parzival actually means pure fool. I'll also be sharing with you some different references to a lot of the symbols that appear in the cards as well too. The magician, ruled by Mercury, is Merlin. Merlin retreats to the isolation of his mountain cave. So I'm just going to share with you the first line for each of these cards so you know what you are looking at. Nimue. For those of you that were fans of the, what was it called? It was a wonderful series, TV series, Merlin. A lot of these stories will be familiar, and I know there have been many Arthurian first night, different movies, other television series that are based on this legend, and so it might be kind of exciting actually to explore this through a tarot deck. So this is Nimue, priestess ruled by the moon. The priestess Nimue and her company congregate in a sacred grove. Guinevere as the empress. The throne looms over Guinevere, representing the tremendous responsibility of the High Queen. Arthur, of course, is the emperor. And while this deck is very cool in color, there is an intensity of color in a few of these cards, particularly the ones that are fiery. We do see dragons in this deck, which I really love. A confident Arthur sits in the seat of power. He is comfortable yet aware of his surroundings and his crucial role. And if I pronounce these names incorrectly, I apologize. Okay, this is not my first language. Taliesin is the Hierophant. Taliesin introduces the children to his lady, the harp. Orpheus charmed his way to the underworld and back by way of his music. Music is a passage to the other world, and this is why the harp has been substituted for the keys traditionally found in the hand of the Hierophant. The lovers is Gareth and Lyonesse. Gareth and Lyonesse walk alone in the woods, far from the curious eyes and gossip of the court. They walk together, but do not cling to one another. The Chariot is the Battle of Mount Badon. By the time of Arthur, the imperial system in Britain had collapsed. In its place stood a threadbare administrative system. Facing the threat of 3 invading nations, Britain appealed to Rome for help, only to be told she must fend for herself. The Battle of Mount Badon would secure Arthur's place as a legendary, titanic leader. So here we have reference to Percival again, and in the strength card, so notice that strength is number 8, we see Percival's vision. In Percival's quest for the Holy Grail, he finds himself marooned on an island wilderness of beasts. On seeing a great battle between a lion and a serpent, Percival killed the serpent, judging the lion to be the gentler of the two. This won him a great friend in the grateful lion. Number 9 is Lancelot. Lancelot as the Hermit. Lancelot du Lac was the flower of chivalry, a role model to many knights, and the passion of many women. So these first lines, of course, are not going to reveal a lot about the story. The Wheel of Fortune. Favored by Fortuna, Arthur sits atop the wheel. From this vantage point, Arthur can see all that is happening, and with his knowledge, his mind can soar. And then there is a dream of Arthur's that is shared in the book. Lady of the Lake. Interesting. You know, some of these tales also, this makes me think of, well, so many. I'm thinking of a Victorian romantic novel. Is there a Victorian romantic novel called Lady of the Lake? Also, some of these legends came to life in the TV show Once Upon a Time as well too. And if you are a fan of this type of television, you know, sometimes it really does help to bring in a correspondence to a story-heavy tarot deck. And I find story-heavy tarot decks to be a little overwhelming. So, yeah, so I hope the podcast really helps. This is Justice. Justice is the Lady of the Lake. The Lady of the Lake appears to Arthur representing cosmic law. The Hanged Man is in front of Castle Perilous. The would-be champions of Lady Leoness hang in the trees, unable to free her or themselves. As was the practice, both hands and one leg are bound behind their backs, representing restriction and limited power. Death. Gwyn ab Nudd and the Wild Hunt. I wonder, I know that the legends are different because the Wild Hunt is also depicted in the Llewellyn Tarot. So I may from time to time compare and contrast images in both decks so we can, because I bet if you have this deck, you've worked with the Llewellyn as well too. And that I know that would be helpful for me to share that. Storm clouds breathe form to Gwyn ab Nudd and his wild hunt. The castle ruins represent the end of an era. So this is death. Castle ruins. Its destruction forces growth and a change of lifestyle more appropriate to current needs. This is a really interesting image. And I can imagine this, the Ace of Cups, I can imagine this being a very potent conversation with the Ace of Cups. I've never actually read with this deck, and I was overwhelmed with the number of legends and the amount of content there was to learn. So hence, this is what I'm doing. So the Cauldron of Anwin. 9 priestesses attend this cauldron, source of poetic inspiration and montic powers. Many people have attributed the powers of prophecy, inspiration, and art to magical springs, cauldrons, and heads. All 3 motifs have been incorporated into the scene, representing the collective unconscious wisdom available to one who seeks it. Cernunnos as the Horned One. So I think we see this in the Druidcraft Tarot for sure, and I know Cernunnos makes an appearance in many decks. Cernunnos is the lord and protector of beasts, rests in the wilds. In a card reading, it can reflect wild, unconventional behavior. Because of the likeness, some may think him the devil of Christianity, but here we are concerned with his original ministry, Lord of the Forest. This is one of my favorite cards. I love this artwork. I was really hoping that I had not purchased a dragon deck and a dragon tarot. And I did purchase the one that has 3 names, Smoke, Ash, and Embers. And I found it to be such gentle imagery. I wanted something like this in that deck. And anyway, I love this card. This is Vortigern's fortress. Vortigern's fortress falls, built as a refuge from invading Saxons. It represents his futile attempts to insulate himself from the consequences of his own actions. The star. The fire drake. The dragon of comets heralds the promise of a new era. The storm clouds of the tower have passed, followed by clear skies indicating calm, fresh air and a chance to regroup. In this piece, one can recognize good omens sent from above. In the moon, we see Morgan Le Fay, also known as Morgana. Fostered by the magic of the moon, Morgan travels the threshold of uncharted worlds. And in the sun, just like in the Llewellyn Tarot, we see Llew, the Llew that Llewellyn was named after. The increasing strength of the rising sun lends its warmth to Llew. In this tarot deck, I was mentioning the planetary astrological associations. This deck does use not classical astrology, so also included are Neptune and Uranus and Pluto. I'm just looking at the notes here. Judgment is ruled by Pluto. This is Avalon. Makes sense, right? For a judgment card. Having traveled through the vales of Avalon, the passing king is brought to rest. This is a rite of passage. Arthur has followed the call and fulfilled his destiny, as symbolized by the water spirit who sounds the Celtic horn. In doing so, she signals the end of one cycle and heralds the arrival of another. And the Universe card, which is also the title that she uses on the Llewellyn. This is the Giant's Dance. Under the heavens and amidst the stones, the dancer celebrates life in her victory dance of being. This ecstasy comes from deep within when the conscious and subconscious work in unison. Okay. So that gives you kind of a flavor of what is happening in the major arcana. And then I'm going to go through and just do sort of a regular walkthrough of the minors and look at the suits side by side and show you how they are presented in this deck. There is a shift in title, in name for the suits. So we have Shields, which is Pentacles. Just make sure I get this right. So we have Spears for Wands, and Cups, and Swords, and Shields. Unlike the Llewellyn Tarot, this tarot has a legend for all of the minors as well. So it's a lot to digest. I'm just going to go to the Ace of Spears. And the details of the legend are, there's less information in the guidebook. However, it does weave in aspects of the legends that have already been shared in the majors. So I think it's important to digest the first 22 cards first, and then we can go into these cards. Really beautiful, beautiful depictions. And yes, there are large borders, but I don't think this is a deck that I would trim. And you do get information about what you're seeing in the picture by the title on the bottom of the card. The Grail Lance, the Holy Grail, Sword of the Strange Hangings, and I really must work on my pronunciation. I won't attempt to say the name in the shield card. And then the twos. So in this, it's not a particularly slippery deck, it's just that I haven't broken it in. It is matte, so it'll show really well on the camera. It is a little faded, and I know it would be better to be zoomed in, but my intention here is not to go in tremendous detail, just to sort of give you a flavor of the deck. Interesting, because there is a deck that I have where Tristan and Isolde are in the Lovers card. Here we see them in the Two of Cups. If you are confused about what the legend represents, there is an inset. So an inset that gives us a clue as to which card we're referring to. So that does help. And I would suggest, if you're interested in working with this tarot, that you take some time to just sit with the cards and to, go through the cards one by one and look into the artwork, perhaps making a pile of images that intrigue you and beginning to just reflect upon those in one way or another. It's absolutely not necessary to master a deck in a short period of time. And of all of the decks that I have or have had, where there are 78 stories in the deck, this is the one that has perhaps stumped me the most. I recently passed on Ghosts, I don't know if it's Ghosts and Spirits. There's quite a few fairy tale decks out there that have 78 legends in the cards. Yeah. And probably next in this series, I will do the Tarot of the Divine, which will be a lot easier to bite off than this one. And so, for example, if you know the story of Lancelot and Elaine, that will be something that will be etched in your memory so that you can refer to that legend perhaps with other decks and other tarot readings. I've watched pretty much every Arthur movie there is, and I find it fascinating how the interpretations of different parts of these stories are portrayed in different TV series and different movies. Also in different books as well too. King of Shields is Uther. And just checking here to see if there are astrological I don't see astrological correspondences here, but what I might do is bring in some of that as well too in our conversations. Sword in the stone, 7 of swords. All right, some of these legends are common. Everyone has heard the legend of the sword and the stone in one iteration or another. And so I think another gift of a deck like this is to implant a myth into a particular card. And every myth, every story, every movie, every song that you have for any given card is only going to build your repertoire of vocabulary in describing that card. And if these particular legends don't sit well with you as an interpretation, then you just leave it. And if you can see the writing on the bottom, you can see some of the interweaving of locations as well. Nine of Cups, the healing of the maimed king. I mean, it's just, the art is just stunning. The use of light in her work. And while the insets, I think, are useful, they do detract from the beauty of the artwork. Nine. What did I do? Did I miss the tens? Sorry, I'll just do that again. So here's the tens. 10 of Shields is Camelot. 10 of Swords is the Battle of Camelon. Corbenic. And the Green Knight for the 10 of Spears. Okay. So now to the court cards. And you may have animal connections with other decks. And I always find it interesting to see how deck creators weave in animal energy, to learn more about animals, to contrast and compare their medicine, their behavior, their characteristics. Anna Marie, I believe she's from the UK, and then she moved to Canada and was in Canada for an extended period of time and then went back to the UK. And the animals, for the most part, are kind of similar, same sort of latitude, but it might be interesting to look at that to see how that is reflected in the cards. All right, so these are the pages. And of course, the knights are on horse or beside horse. Belvedere, Galahad, Gawain, and Bors. And the queens will be familiar names if you have read any of these legends. And apparently I have misordered something. I'm not sure where the King of Shields is. I will. Of course, it will show up at some point. Yeah. All right. So if you have any requests for this forthcoming podcast. So when I say podcast, it means that I will be doing more reading. I've also purchased a better quality microphone. So my intention is to kind of get lost in the story and to narrate the stories and then have a bit of conversation about the story in terms of its placement in the tarot. Okay? So thank you for being here today, and let me know if you have any questions or requests for this upcoming feature on my channel. Take good care. Namaste.